This episode of Unfiltered is brought to you by Dad's Root Beer. Except it's not really because they don't sponsor us, but so then you just get thirsty. That'll come back to haunt me before the end of this. I'm telling you. That normally happens to me when I drink something. What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of Unfiltered, and wanted to talk about something that happened the other night. Probably should have jumped on this yesterday when the story was hot, but if you haven't heard, which I don't know how you haven't by now, but there was a fight on Thursday Night Football. The two teams that were involved were the Steelers and the Browns, and defensive end Myles Garrett of the Browns and quarterback Mason Rudolph of the Steelers got into it pretty heavy with like 8 seconds left. I preface this by saying that the game wasn't all that, to me, I don't think it was all that entertaining. The Browns are winning 21-7. This is the first time in, 5 years they say that the Browns were about to beat the Steelers. So it was big for the city of Cleveland and, Browns fans and the players themselves. But for people that don't have a team between those two, it really wasn't all that, entertaining of a game. Was a literal fight between Browns defensive end Myles Garrett and quarterback of the Steelers Mason Rudolph. Basically, it was 8 seconds left in the game. Like I said, nothing to play for. Literally, other than maybe just basically a extra touchdown. Which, I mean, if you're playing in a league where, maybe points are a tiebreaker, you worry about trying to get to 14. Maybe. I don't know. But that night, Mason Rudolph was actually horrible. I think he had thrown 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions. But the big thing was the fight where basically Myles Garrett was going 100. And with 8 seconds left, which I don't get the point of that. That's what I'll discuss a little bit later. And Mason Rudolph got rid of the ball. I don't think Myles Garrett actually knew that he had gotten rid of the ball. Possibility he did, I don't know. They haven't said. He hasn't really spoken on it other than the I lost my cool portion. But, he sacked Rudolph. And, he didn't sack him, I guess. He hit him. Rudolph didn't take too kindly to it. He tried to take his helmet off. That's where a lot of people are getting, this kind of messed up at. Rudolph did try to take Myles Garrett's helmet off. You can see there's a point in there where, in the video, where you see him literally try to yank for it. So when Myles Garrett flips him over to try to get, somewhat of a position on him, he takes his helmet off, which with pretty much relative ease. If you've never seen Myles Garrett outside of football pads, that man is fucking huge. He is a literal tank, and like they say, he acts like a big kid sometimes, which that's why a lot of people like him. He's never really shown kind of that situation that happened. That really had never been something that had reared its head before. He did have a couple of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties earlier in the season. I think first week of the season, he punched Delaney Walker in the head, and I think he got fined. And I think he may have gotten ejected for that, but I'm not sure. But I told y'all that was going to come back to haunt me drinking that root beer. But for Myles Garrett, I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, Myles Garrett takes off Mason Rudolph's helmet. And what exacerbated the situation was Mason Rudolph basically running along, still trying to prove a point to I don't know who. And Myles Garrett just took his helmet like Thor's hammer and just decks him with it. The thing that does save Mason Rudolph in this situation from being seriously injured, because had, he used another portion of the helmet, Mason Rudolph wouldn't have been standing up to try to tell somebody to throw him out of the game. That man would have been out cold if he had used the crown of his helmet. Because where he used it, he used like that little rubber end on the back of the helmet. And where he hit him, it was the center of the head. Like a lot of people say, it could have fractured his skull. But, that's where it just all went wrong. And then a few of the Steelers linemen jumped in, and it just was a whole mess. And it kind of wasn't a good look for the NFL. But I don't want to paint Myles Garrett as a bad guy, because he's not. And, all football players have that streak. Like they've said about Myles Garrett, he doesn't know how to go 100 in any situation. Whether they're in practice or if it's a game, he's going 180 when he should be going 100. And, you kind of got to have somebody like that pinned back. But, let's not sit there and say Mason Rudolph is completely innocent, because he's not. He made the situation worse by, still trying to tag along. Instead of just standing there when he got his helmet ripped off, that was enough to probably have gotten Myles Garrett ejected. Maybe he gets a game or two. But because Mason Rudolph sat there and kind of egged him on a little bit, he basically got, I hate to say, what kind of was coming to him in that situation. If you expect somebody when they're angry or when they're in a situation where it's the heat of the moment, just to kind of sit there and just say, oh, well, this is over because I took your helmet off. No. If you're still up in my face and you're probably fussing and cussing, I'm not, gonna just say, oh, well, maybe you're right. No. The guy, it was a fight or flight situation, I think, and he made a mistake in that situation, but it was a costly mistake. So Myles Garrett is suspended indefinitely. They've said the rest of this year and possible playoffs if the Browns were to make it. And he's going to have to apply for reinstatement at the beginning of next season. So we don't know, how that's going to work out. I was listening to, I think, I don't know what, I don't really watch FS1 like that, but Shannon Sharp said on his show with Colin Cowherd that, Undisputed, that's what it's called, that he felt like, the end of this year and 4 games in the next year, which would be 10 games, and that kind of would teach him a lesson. I don't think it's one of those situations where he's going to get suspended and never be able to play again. It's not a situation that you've seen often recently. I mean, we've had Vontaze Burfict getting suspended or getting fined for, cheap shots and headshots. But this is kind of a situation where the NFL did have to act. I understand why they suspended him like they did. I don't know if he's gonna, refute it or, try to appeal it. And I don't know how the Players Association is gonna go about the appeals process in that. But I just know, it was to me it was a heat of the moment situation, but it was still and I guess the best way to put it, is he may not have started it, but what do they always say about when when unsportsmanlike conduct calls happen? You may not have started it, but you were the last one to do something and you got caught doing it. And unfortunately for Myles Garrett, it's going to put him in a situation where people are going to look at him, that aren't fans of the Browns or don't follow football all that correctly, as they're going to paint a picture of him as this thug or this, person that you're going to expect something like that from him every time he laces up on the football field. So I don't want that to be his, his mark. It's a black eye for him. It's a black eye for the NFL. But, you can only hope that he's going to learn a lesson from that. I don't agree with Mason Rudolph not getting at least one game of suspension. I understand the fine, and I really hope he doesn't try to appeal that, because he played as just a bigger part in this situation than Myles Garrett did. And like I say, he just didn't get caught. But, that's... you hate that we have to talk about this. You hate that we have to talk about this at this point in the season, where we still got things going on like Kaepernick's tryout that's kind of been somewhat bungled by the NFL. Other situations with domestic violence, so it's not been all that bad. It's not something that you kind of want to dot the I on the 100th season of the NFL, but I'll see where we go from here, because it's kind of a rough situation. But the NFL is just gonna have to try to do a little bit better and see how they can make good out of this situation. So so I talked about sports with I've talked about football with an Orioles hat and a Marilyn Monroe t-shirt on. Man, I am killing it. There are a bunch of, you probably notice when I go in to edit this, there's gonna be a lot of things that happen. I burped. There was like a fly or a gnat or something in here, and I killed it like right in the middle of doing the video. I think epilogues, I'm not gonna kind of like edit these, because it's just like, these are fun, and eventually they tell you links of my videos to watch. So dude, if you have never had a Dad's root beer, you can get these at Big Lots, and you get a liter one for $1. I shouldn't even be drinking soda, but oh my god, root beer is heaven. And it's not even as sweet as like everybody else's root beer. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Leave a like, leave a comment, and we'll see you next go around.